Once again, my friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now guys, in today's video, just after making a video about Donald Trump, the president of the United States, warning Jamaica not to join BRICS. Now, Donald Trump has cut aid to all African nations and the Caribbean countries. In an executive order, just first day in his office, Donald Trump has cut aid to Africa and all the Caribbean countries. So guys, in this video we'll be discussing what that means for Africa and the Caribbean countries. So let's dive into this video and then I'll be back with more comments. But guys, remember, like this video so that it can be recommended to a lot of people as much as possible. So let's dive in.
The US President Donald Trump and his executive orders. Trump did not waste much time and signed a record number of executive orders on his first day of presidency. The over 200 executive orders signed indicate how US policies under him will look. An executive order is a powerful tool used by a U.S. president which does not require congressional approval. Trump has signed a flurry of such orders on a range of issues from trade to energy to climate and immigration. Many of them are controversial, and their impact will not just be felt in America. They can change U.S. relationship with the rest of the world, which has reacted with unease. And it seems Trump's to-do list is also not bringing any good news for Africa. Many of Trump's executive orders will have negative impact on Africa. We have a list of some of them. Now, first is the suspension of foreign aid programs. Trump does not see foreign aid in the best interest of the United States. His executive order is freezing disbursement of all U.S. foreign development assistance for 90 days, pending a review. The U.S. is the world's biggest foreign aid donor, and a huge sum is directed toward Africa. Over the 2023-24 financial year, the U.S. said it had donated almost $3.7 billion to Africa. Now, this aid contributes to various nations, international organizations, and to TB and malaria as epidemics, as well as to the United Nations agencies. But now all of it will be impacted. From aid cuts, we move to tariffs. Under his America First trade policy, Trump announced plans to establish an external revenue service. It will be used for collecting tariffs, duties, and other foreign trade-related revenue. A major impact could be on AGOA, which provides African countries with duty-free access to the U.S. markets for specific products. The plan is set to be expiring this year, but now there are doubts if Trump would renew it. Countries like South Africa could be majorly impacted, as its key exports like cars, wines, and grapes could be in the crosshairs. Next is the executive order that can impact Africa. It's America's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. It wasn't surprising that this was among the list. In his first term as well, Trump signed an order to withdraw from the pact, a move the former President Joe Biden promptly reversed on his first day in office in 2021. The U.S. is the world's second largest greenhouse gas emitter behind only China, and its withdrawal from the Climate Pact could deal a blow worldwide. Now, speaking of withdrawals, Trump has also signed an executive order for the withdrawal from the World Health Organization. The U.S. is the WHO's top donor and partner. The withdrawal of U.S. funding will negatively impact the organization to identify and respond to emergencies across the world. It could undermine the efforts to bridge global health inequalities and leave African nations at a greater risk. And then comes the declaration of an energy emergency aimed at boosting oil and gas production in the United States. This will impact African oil and gas producing nations like Nigeria and Angola, as cheaper American crude would challenge their market share. Then there are some other orders, like suspending refugee settlement program and ending the birthright citizenship, which could also have a negative impact on Africans. But what could benefit Africa is Trump's quest for mineral dominance. His executive orders also seek to boost domestic mining and minerals processing. American companies eager to ensure reliable access to rare earth metals and other critical minerals might increase investment in Africa. This could help to boost jobs and infrastructure. But overall, the opportunities for African nations seem low. How can Africa brace for the Trump impact? Now, for more on this, we have with us Phumlani Majozi, an author and political analyst who is joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Pleasure. It's great to be here again. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. Now, Phumlani, how will the suspension of U.S. foreign assistance programs affect African nations that heavily rely on aid for critical sectors such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure? Are there specific countries or regions that will be disproportionately impacted?
Well, no doubt there will be implications of Mr. Trump's actions with respect to that issue. I think this thing, it needs to be thought from a broader perspective, and that is, leaders around the world, many leaders, whether you're talking about in Africa or in other continents, there has been this, way of getting used to American sort of finances or American taxpayers having to pay for many of the global programs. And we are facing the reality now that really nobody should rely on the United States, right? That whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Latin America, in Europe, as nations, we need to get our act together, right? And be able to come together and solve our issues or our problems. And that would include, when it comes to including things like financing, right, of projects, because this idea that we'll forever be relying on countries like the US, because it may be Joe Biden last time it's Donald Trump now. He has a different view. Another president is going to come through and have a different perspective. So things may change. So this poses a challenge for African leaders, for everybody in different nations, to do not rely on the US when it comes to financing of such things, or even from a foreign aid perspective. There has to be reform. There has to be wealth being created. And to answer your question specifically, yes, there will be an impact for sure. But then that impact, it's about how do we sort of what we learn from it as developing nations. How do we, come together to start our own initiatives and not be reliant on U.S. taxpayers' money or the U.S. government, I should say.
Right, and with Trump's decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement and the WHO, what are the potential long-term effects on Africa's efforts to combat climate change and to address public health crises like malaria, HIV and AIDS, and possible future pandemics?
Well, when you look at the WHO, the World Health Organization, part of what Mr. Trump has been raising for a while is that WHO is being used by some political powers around the world, specifically in his opinion, China, to advance some political interests, right? It's being used by China and other nations to advance some political interest. And he also says that they mishandled COVID-19, right? Or COVID, I should say, the pandemic. So that is those are his concerns when it comes to the WHO. And he has been critical of this organization for a long time, because remember, the US is the biggest financial backer of the WHO. About 18% of funding comes from the US, of the WHO funding. So that one involves a bit of politics, geopolitics as well. He's concerned that China is using WHO to advance its interests. And that's how we need to think about it. That's how we need to think as well when it comes to the whole situation. The Paris Agreement is also a very interesting one, because you will remember that Mr. Trump is not really into the green agenda. He's not really into that. He's a man who believes in fossil fuels, right? In using the natural resources, different kinds of, energies and fossil fuels. He's not really a believer when it comes to climate change sort of initiatives. Now, I must stress this: for developing nations, especially in Africa, where there is still a heavy reliance on things like coal or fossil fuels, and Trump's presidency might lift that pressure, right? Because Trump is not really pushing very hard when it comes to things like climate change or Paris agreements, as he's withdrawing from that, all those things. So there will be less pressure globally for a push on renewable energies, on green energies, and Africa is going to be part of that as well, experiencing that lifting of pressure. For them to be able to probably even focus more on also fossil fuels, to try and diversify their energies. And I express that because there have been some concerns by some people that this pushing through forcefully with the green energies and so on, we need to keep in mind that they are developing nations that heavily reliant on fossil fuels, heavily reliant on coal and so on. So how we transition from the old way of coal and fossil fuels into green and renewable energies, it needs to be done in a very smoothly and carefully.
Once again, welcome back to my channel. It's with my wish that you've watched the video up to the end. Now guys, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has cut aid to Africa and the Caribbean countries. This comes recently after Donald Trump warned Jamaica about joining BRICS. We all know in Africa we have South Africa that joined BRICS, and now Donald Trump also withdrew United States from the World Health Organization, which is WHO. And we know United States is majorly among the donors in World Health Organization. So big question is, does this come after South Africa joined WHO? I mean joined the BRICS? Why would United States withdraw from the World Health Organization? Now, another thing is these cutting aid to Africa and also the Caribbean countries. This should Africa and Jamaica, or rather the Caribbean countries, should use this as an opportunity to grow themselves, expand themselves. We all know, for a start, this might be a long, bumpy ride for Africa, for African nations and the Caribbean countries, because we know the kind of support that United States, let's just put it point blank, we all know the kind of help that the United States has been giving towards Africa. But now they should use this opportunity to, I mean, for instance, look at the countries in Africa that really exports its minerals, its produce to the foreign countries. How about they use these produces to stabilize our countries, like develop our countries? I keep on telling you, for we to be respected, we must first develop our countries. Because most of these countries see us as a third world or third world countries. They don't have respect for us. This actually puts me back to the recent video I did about Trump warning Jamaica not to join BRICS. Like, who does he think he is to actually tell a country what to do and not to do? We have a lot of produces. Africa, we produce a lot of minerals here. The only problem we have is we have a lot of corrupt leaders. We have a lot of them. I don't know why we call them leaders. These are just corrupt politicians. People who actually think they are leaders. They are not leaders. More to say, they are sellouts. So the only problem we'll be having is how to process all this. But slowly we'll be picking up. This is a chance to develop our countries. Let's not focus on the negative side that the United States has cut its aid towards us, towards Africa, towards the Caribbean nations. Let these be a motivation to us, not a setback. And like I said, it will be hell of a ride for the first years. But as time goes by, we'll catch up. It's high time that Africa and all the Caribbean countries, we should be, or rather we should just depend on ourselves and not any other country. Because if we depend on them, look at what has just happened. This is a wake-up call. As much as these people think withdrawing or rather cutting these aids towards Africa and the Caribbean nations, it's rather making us learn the hardest way. No, it's actually a wake-up call to us, to Africa and all the Caribbean countries. This is a wake-up call. This should be a wake-up call. But how do we deal with these corrupt leaders that we have in? How do we deal with them? Because these are now the things, or rather the people that set us back as a country. These are the setbacks we're having. As much as we want our countries to develop, how about these people we put in power? What do they want for the country? What do they want for the upcoming vision, for the upcoming generations? What do they want? Most of these leaders, they're just greedy, selfish. They only care about their pockets and their powers, or rather their position in power. They don't care about the country. They don't care about the well-being of the citizens of a country itself. So this should be a wake-up call. As much as United States has withdrawn also from the World Health Organization, and they also cut ties to Africa and the Caribbean countries, this should be a wake-up call. We all know also Trump has been talking of deporting the illegal immigrants, and so far so good. I think his first actions has started. Well, I would love for all the African nations and the Caribbean countries to take this as a wake-up call. Don't dive back into griefs and mourns, focusing on the negative things. Let's focus on the positives. What can we achieve by this? What can our countries achieve by this? So guys, if you found this video interesting, kindly give me a like, a subscribe and a comment. Also, make sure you like this video so that it can be recommended to a lot of people as much as possible. I'm your host Larry, and until we meet again, peace out.